Hey there, wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of The Finnovator with me, Stuart Bell, business coach and founder of Idea Coaching Consulting. And today I wanted to share with you a training module which it first became part of the curriculum in about 2018, 2019. And it was inspired in part by two things. Firstly, it was inspired by the fact that I'd done a lot of work in the textile space, and I'd noticed how important it was in the adoption of software tools. For as soon as you sign up for a free trial for whatever the app or the software as a service that you're signing up for, the clock was ticking. They had a certain amount of time which they had to get you utilizing the tool, and the longer it took for you to get your head around it, the steeper the learning curve, the less likely it was that you were going to become a client or a customer. And the second part was this insight into how important the first impression is in doing a whole bunch of things with clients that enable them to extract value from what you do, from training them to work with you the right way, sprinkling in a little bit of excitement and delight that triggers that, that I made a great decision rather than buyer's remorse. And even giving people the right information at the right time. There's nothing worse than being bombarded with information. Some of it's useful. And there was a story I think I talked about in the module, which is a story told by a Microsoft employee about Bill Gates and about his approach to what he needed to know at a point in time. So the module I'm going to share is called the First 90. And since that first incarnation, it's become another program staple. It's something I've traveled all over the world to present to various different audiences, but always advice practice owners or accountants or mortgage brokers. And it's always got people thinking about what they could do in that first 3-month period to get clients on board with advice, to train them and get rid of all those bad habits that they might build up later about how they communicate or how they submit data, and ultimately get the relationship off on the right foot and with the right momentum. So let's dive in there right now. And again, as always, if you enjoy the content and you want more, please feel free to head over to our website, ourdairy.com.au. Check out some of the programs we've got on offer. And if you love the podcast, please feel free to drop in and leave a little review, because it helps tell other people what it's all about and give them a sense of whether it's something they want to listen to. Anyway, without any further delay, let's drop in and let's have a chat about the first 90 days. So the first 90, and there's one big idea I think that sits behind this whole thing, and that is, for me, the butterfly effect, chaos theory, if you like. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie with Ashton Kutcher. It's actually a good movie. I really enjoyed it. But the butterfly effect is this idea that, I think beautifully put, a butterfly flaps its wings in Beijing and a tornado hits the American Midwest. It's the idea that really, really small things can have massive impacts later on. And when I talk about the first 90 days, I've done a number of research pieces on this. One of the research pieces that I did, I think it was about 2013, is I went out to a group of advisors, and I wanted to answer this age-old question: which is better, two appointments or three? Is it better to do a first appointment and then present advice, or is it better to do a first appointment strategy meeting and then present advice? And what came out of it is that generally it depends on the advice, it depends on the advisor. There was no real right or wrong way. It was what was suitable for that particular situation. But what we did uncover, which is really interesting, is the way that clients were onboarded, the way that advisors approached this, the way they communicated, the way they structured it, had this impact that kind of lingered and lingered. And some of the benefits it has was, obviously, turnaround times were a lot quicker. Expectations were set, so there was less kind of pressure on the business. We saw increased referrals. We saw increased retention. We saw less fee sensitivity, and not just fee sensitivity upfront, but year after year after year. Profitability tended to be bigger, and businesses generally who did this really well ended up sort of servicing more of the client's needs, as well as obviously expanding the advice to other people. So when I start off by talking about the butterfly effect, the reason for it is getting this piece right isn't just about those first 90 days. It's actually about what comes after, which is why I think it's a really important piece to do. The areas that we're going to dive into, this is a model or a template that I drew a while ago when a client of mine asked, Justin Highland asked, he said, can you draw on a piece of paper all of the modules on the program and how they fit together? It's probably need updating. We're going to leave this piece over here because that's kind of your market. That's the marketing side of things. This is kind of the first contact call. I think most of you have adopted this. But for me, this onboarding or this phase kind of starts here. You have the plan scope session, you sort of agree the scope, and you either get the yes, let's do this, or you get, a couple of days later, you follow them up and you do the yes. And what starts is a sequence of events, which can be structured in a certain way, and we'll talk through that, which is obviously a lot of it's about the plan and the advice production piece, but it's also about making sure that there are certain things done in those first 90 days, certain communications, certain outreaches, certain touch points, as well as the implementation piece, which come together to sort of trigger something. So I wanted to put that up front, so give you a bit of a sense of where we're going to go, but let's just jump in. So whenever I talk to businesses about not having this right, or not doing this particularly well, there's kind of a few things that pop up which we were trying to attack. I always think of, if you're doing a really good job with your first appointment, you're probably absolutely having a real emotional impact on clients. They're coming in from a position where I don't really know what I want, or I think I know what I need, and they're leaving there excited. They're kind of like, wow, I can actually see how we're going to achieve things. You've probably triggered some different thinking about things. And I always think that once they come on board, it's kind of like waiting outside a nightclub, right? They're really excited and they get in. And the problem is, if you don't do this right, you hit go, then things start to drag. You're kind of like not turning things around, or their expectations, we're going to get a plan in front of us in a week or whatever. And it's almost like walking into the nightclub and you've just been waiting there and there's music outside, and suddenly you walk in and it's kind of empty. And you're sort of walking around going, oh, where's the party at? You know what I mean? Invariably, what happens then is, if you've got this situation where they're kind of like, what next? They don't know where things are at. Maybe things are taking a little bit longer than they expected. What you tend to find is that the client, I don't know if you've had this experience, the client kind of tends to lead. They're driving it, and that tends to put pressure on you. You feel like, oh, we've got to get it done quicker. And worst case scenario, if you get this right, you get a client that's converted. They said yes, but they're not quite convinced. And you end up with this thing called buyer's remorse, which is, once we hit that sort of decision to buy something or engage with something or purchase or engage, there's only two options. Either we trigger the natural desire to want to validate our decisions, or the opposite. We kind of look at that and go, oh, I wish I could go back. I wish I didn't have to do that. Does that make sense so far? So getting this right, what I really wanted to do is get you a situation where the client is motivated, from not just motivated by the first appointment, but they continue to be motivated all the way through the process. You roll out the red carpet. You really give them the big welcome. You make them feel good about the decision. You introduce them to the wider team. We make a really great first impression. I don't know if anybody has sort of seen any of the videos of the Tesla ludicrous button. It's quite entertaining, because the Tesla, being an electric car, it basically accelerates with, I think it's something to do with torque. Whereas a petrol engine, you push the accelerator, there's a point beyond where it doesn't accelerate any further. It just accelerates at the same rate. Electric cars don't have that. Literally, they accelerate all the way down to the floor. So electric cars accelerate at a much more ludicrous rates. They take photos of people and they're, whoa, it's amazing. And what makes I think this such an amazing thing to watch is, you've got someone who's going from 0 to suddenly 180 or 120. And it's that rapid change that creates the first impression. Same deal here with the first 90 days. If you can take someone from, I'm expecting this, and suddenly you exceed it because you do some really simple things well, that's where that first impression gets bumped up. And of course, if the first impression happens, you get some advocacy things going on. You get the opportunity to set the pace. In other ways, you say, right, this is going to happen then, and you reinforce it all the way through. And we get, instead of buyer's remorse, we get this rationalization of choice, which anybody who's done the sort of HASI exam, looked at biases, will know. Choice rationalization is where you congratulate yourself on making a really good decision. So, and another really important thing, I think, is rather than manage expectations or set expectations, you control them. You get to influence them. Setting's good, but I think being able to control them from that point onwards and influence them is equally important. So, obviously, advocacy. It's interesting. I forgot Nina or Chris or anyone from, no. Okay. So I've been doing a little bit of work with the guys at Sovereign on referrals recently. And we've been tracking really closely the conversations they're having, where they're coming from, and that equally important question of, what are the triggers? What's happening in order to make somebody speak to a friend, and in similarly that friend to go, okay, I'm going to meet with them. And it's interesting what I've noticed, and it's not just from these guys, it's coming from a few different places. What I've noticed is that there's a lot of referrals coming right now from new clients who've just come on board. And the reason being, research has shown that the most the point at which clients are most likely to refer through is at the very beginning, because that's when the impression is the greatest. So if we can get this right, the chances are we're going to trigger that advocacy piece. So just based on what we've spoken about there, I want to just check in with you guys, and please come off mute if you can. What's the thing that you're most interested in getting out of this? What's the outcome you most want to achieve? Is it addressing the empty party problem? Is it maximizing referrals? Is it taking control of expectations so you don't feel under pressure? Tamara, what about you? What's the main thing you'd like to do?
So clients feel more, they know what's coming, they know the process. Because I still get, emails, when do we meet up, or what's the next step? It's just having the client feel like they know the journey, and and I am only asking at referrals right at the end after implementation, which or asking for even like a testimonial right at the end, so kind of bringing them forward as well. So that's pretty much Perfect. It, just having that explained for the client.
I don't know whether I'm the only one, but I hate it when I get followed up by a client about something that's just about to happen. It's not a bad thing, but maybe it's just me personally. I go,
it's because that you would you'd probably procrastinated on, exactly. Sending that quick email.
I wanted to be the person in front of that, standing behind it. Sean, what about you?
It's just the consistency of process. So making sure every client has the same experience and doing it the same way every time.
Yeah, so you can get that secret sauce, that IP, and sort of condense it.
Yeah.
Daryl.
For me, it's best practice, Stu, to see whether we can improve what we're actually doing, and who are the people out there doing it the best. Okay,
cool. By the way, I think your audio is very low, Daryl. I caught that. So look, along the way, if there's anything that you're doing that you want to pop in, I'm going to talk a little bit about these cards we've created. Please shout it out, because I think some of the best outcomes come when practices share what they've been doing, and you kind of get to seed what you're doing with other people's ideas.
Our biggest one at the moment, Stu, is, say, for example, with insurers, and it takes you a month to get a tele-underwriting appointment, and sort of by the time all that happens, the clients are a little bit lost as to what the actual strategy is and what the contents were in your SLA. And I find when you get a third party sort of ruining the party, so to speak, you sort of go back over a lot of old ground, just reiterating exactly what it is you're doing for them.
Has anyone in the room attacked that problem? I feel like you'd have a bit of insight here, maybe.
My issue is basically exactly the same as what Tamara said, I think, in terms of setting expectations and then back to your point, Stu, not having clients follow you up when you know you're about to do something next. And you might have told them, you might not have, but having that consistency behind it is the key thing for me, I think.
This is another thing that came out of the research, that clients, or how can I say this? They're less sensitive to how long it takes unless expectations are not managed, in which case they'll jump all over it. So yeah, that's a big one. Taylor.
Yeah, similarly to what you just said, I think with managing client expectations and delivering on that and just setting that out.
Cool.
Making the whole onboarding experience an enjoyable thing for clients.
Yeah, I think, it's the whole thing about you get one chance to make a first impression. It's true. Like, people will form a judgment pretty early on, and it's possible to move it around, but it's pretty concrete. Josh.
Headphones might be dying, so that might be why you can't hear me.
No worries.
So mine is the consistency that Sean was mentioning, and probably having, I think, some sort of automation that comes through that, so I don't miss things along the way. I think is probably, so it's the same thing for every client, for most things. Obviously, things that trigger me to give them calls and whatnot, but that sort of put them on after.
I'm going to talk about the automation thing. I'm definitely going to talk about that, because that's a big one. And I actually spoke to Kim from Advice Intelligence, and we were talking about, the sometimes you want emails automated and sometimes you want to personalize them. And there seems to be no middle ground. So I will definitely cover off on that. Okay, cool. So there's a few people want to talk about consistency. A few people just want to set expectations. There's a bit about wanting to know, the best practice. On the topic of, I actually just want to circle back. The insurance one, Trent. Another piece of research I did, I think it was about 6 years ago. We were sort of going through a process of understanding what were the real value points that advisors could look at that they didn't really even realize. And often what we find with insurance is you're the reason they stick at it. Otherwise they drop out. It's too hard. I can't be bothered with the medicals. So kind of you can almost, I don't know if you already do this, but you can kind of apply an us and them thing. and say, look, here's the situation. The insurance process can be difficult. It can be strainful, but I'm going to be right beside you. I'm going to tell you when it's going to happen. I'm going to help you push it forward, but I want you to do me a favor. Stick with me. We'll get through this, because at the end of the day, you're going to get a good deal out of it. You're going to get protected, and we're going to get it done. And I'm going to make sure that what would otherwise seem like a hassle probably is going to be a little bit of a hassle. It's going to stay in place. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's dive in. I'm going to draw I'm going to draw from a bunch of examples here, because there's I think some of the best insight I've got, particularly in the client experience space, in this space to some degree, is from looking outside the industry. Tech companies are really good at this. Generally, I mean, this is, you can go online and go, what's the best user onboarding sequences? And there's lead magnets everywhere. There's insight, because the moment that you sign up for a tech solution, an app, the clock is ticking. And the clock is ticking because they've got to get you to use it. If you don't use it, you're going, can't be bothered. It's that kind of gap between something that, is useful and too hard. And we'll talk about that in a second. So a lot of what I've learned about this over the last few years in particular is drawing from what tech companies do to make sure that when you come on board, eventually you start to use it. And once you start to use it, you eventually upgrade it. Has anyone ever been to a TGI Fridays? I used to go to one when I was a kid, but it was one near our house in England. It was kind of weird because in England, they don't usually have these sort of things. But if you've ever been to one, it's one of those theme restaurants. I don't know how many there are around anymore, but you'd walk in and the first thing that you'd see is they've got all these badges on them, and the whole thing's done in a really sort of American style. But the first thing they do is they go, have you ever been to a TGI Fridays before? And if you haven't, they talk you through the menu. They walk you through, okay, this is this, how it works. In other words, the moment you go into that restaurant, they're training you to appreciate the system. They're training you to stick within the system, and they're training you to kind of enjoy the experience straight away. And it's very deliberate. It's interesting because when I talk to people about this, they kind of say, oh, it's a gimmick thing, right? But I don't know if anyone's ever been to Momofuku, or when it was in the style, Momofuku Seibu. Has anyone been to it before? Has anyone check that one out? Okay. This is a sushi restaurant, or it's a Japanese restaurant, really, Japanese style. But you couldn't phone anybody in the restaurant. Like if you wanted to book, you have to go online. You have to book. You book a table, right, or you book a time. I took Rachel there. You rock up, you walk in, you sit around, and you don't order. You get whatever they give you, and that's the way it works. In other words, there's no personal contact. It's all systems driven. Now, at the time, it was kind of weird because we're kind of used to 5-star restaurants being very, very personalized. But it's another example of a business that they turned around and said, this is the way we do things. We're still going to give you a great experience, but we're taking control of the process. So instead of you walking in and going, can I get a menu? Do you mind? It's literally, or trying to phone up and book a table. They define the model. And as such, you kind of fall in with it because they get you at the very beginning. Does that make sense? Even IKEA. I don't know how people feel about IKEA. I hate it. I think hell is probably an endless IKEA. But the moment you walk in, they know that the success of their business model depends on you buying into the idea that essentially you have to walk around a giant warehouse and put stuff in a cart and then go to the end and buy it all. But they've nailed it. And that's one of the reasons they're one of the most, if not the most successful homeware company worldwide, because their onboarding thing is all about, whether you like it or not, is all about explaining that you have to go through the whole process. You have to look at everything. I mean, you can cut through here and there, but if you want to buy a plant, you have to walk through the whole hall to get to the end, and it's very successful. Similarly, if you've probably heard me talk about Bridgecom before, but that's another business where the onboarding is insanely good. Literally, you walk in, you're on a human conveyor belt where you go through each station where they show you the safety gear. They teach you how to use the clip-on thing. They teach you what to do, not to do. They take off all your jewelry and everything. And again, it's onboarding you. So they can take you up into what is an incredibly legislative, rules laden environment, which is pretty dangerous, and they can make sure you stick with it. And at the end of it, you come back and go, that was amazing. So there's a lot that we're going to work through, and a lot of it's drawn from a lot of different areas. So the process, actually, let's just jump in the principles. So we're going to work through the worksheets in a second. I'm going to show you how these work in principle. But let me just jump in. There's kind of 5 sort of principles I want to sort of dive into before we do. The first one is about when you first bring on board a client, the best thing you can do early on is kind of teach them exactly what they need to know about what you do, about what you expect of them, and about controlling expectations. I've actually just started to learn the guitar. I'm actually being taught by one of our clients' brother. We're doing a bit of a deal. But when I sat down with Toby, one of the first things we did is he basically took me through and said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you some basics. I'm going to teach you about your hand position. I'm going to teach you about, using different fingers. I'm going to teach you all of the things that you need to know so they don't become bad habits. Now, it's not particularly exciting, and I'd much rather be learning how to riff Nirvana or whatever it is. But what essentially Toby's doing is he's teaching me the good habits. So straight off the bat, he can then teach me things at a faster rate, and I'm not going to have to go back and relearn those things. It's kind of like I feel it's like a brand new computer. Brand new computers, again, because they don't have any errors. They don't have any of the programs left over. You can just start from scratch. It's going to be efficient. It's going to work properly. Same goes for pricing, by the way. If I've done pricing with you, you'll know that one of the best places to start with pricing is you start with your existing your new clients, because they have no expectation of what your proposition is. They have no expectation of how you paid before. It's a blank sheet of paper. So one of the first things we're going to do early on is we're going to make sure that we condense the things that you need to tell clients so they fall in with the right behaviors, the right communications, responding to requests for information. And we really nail any sort of deviation from that early on. Okay. The second thing we really want to do is we want to make sure, put it this way, part of giving onboarding really well is giving advice in a really timely manner. And whatever your timely manner may be, there's an article I've shared on the Facebook group, I think about 2 weeks ago, about average turnaround times for advice. Whereas, I think 1 in 5 businesses are taking more than 30 days. I think 2 in 5 take between 14 to 30 days. And I think there's 2 in 5 who do it within 10. So there's a wide range. But the other piece for me is about how clients feel as part of the process. I had a discussion the other day with AI about this, and it came down to digital fact finding. I might circle back on that because it's really interesting. Like they have a process where they can get the advice process down from 26 hours to 5 hours, which is pretty impressive. But one of the things they have to do is they have to actually send out a fact find to clients early on, which comes via a portal. Clients log in and they complete all the information. And the question I asked them is, great, but how many clients actually complete the information? And Kim was like, not that many. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Debbie, you sort of smiled. What do you think about that?
So we work with a older demographic, and technology is not their friend. So we struggle just to get them to log in to a portal, let alone completing a fact find in one.
See, definitely usage is one of those things, but there's a lot of older people now who are very comfortable with technology. My mother-in-law's all over Facebook. She's doing code camp. It's ridiculous. I think a lot of it's got to do with motivation. Like if I'm coming in to meet with you as an advisor, right? And I just want to have a chat. I want to see what you can do. And I get this massive fact find. I'm not really very motivated to fill it in because I don't know really what the purpose of. Do you know what I mean? So I think one of the really things to keep an eye on when you're going through this is if you get a focus on, okay, what can I do to up the client's motivation? Then it's going to make it more likely that they're going to return the information quickly, do the fact find, get back to you. You know what I mean? For me, if I break down these two things, excite is all about future expectations. I will be excited about going to the movies. I'm excited about, Christmas. It's all about the future. Delight is all about the present experience, about what's going on right now. And the reason this is really matters is something we're going to dive into when we get into portal theory, which is why I wanted to raise that portal thing. And it's all about adoption. There's a great book on this, Hooked by Nur Ayal, who's basically condensed a lot of what I guess is well known in Silicon Valley about rolling out technology, which is technology is actually not about technology. Technology is mostly about habit forming. If you log on to Facebook, eventually get to a point where it becomes part of your normal routine. Does that make sense? And what actually causes something to become part of our routine is called the fog model. There's two things that sort of work, motivation and ability. In other words, if you're giving a client some data, some information to fill in, and they don't understand the information and it's hard, it's basically the level of complexity is too high. It'll just fail. Does that make sense? However, the thing you can play on the other end is if If it's hard to do and they're not motivated to do it, and you motivate them to do it, they'll push through it. Make sense? I mean, everybody's been in a situation where maybe they're trying to get fit or they're trying to learn something and it's really, really hard, but because you really want to do it, you push through. So the thing is, when we're asking clients to do difficult things and we sort of mark them and go, that's kind of that level of complexity. The thing we can pull is a bit of motivation in order to push them through. And the triggers to pull are, we either excite them about, if we get this done, this is what's going to come, or we delight them by making them feel good about the situation, they're good about where they're at, and making them want to keep going. Does that make sense so far? All right, cool. The third one, oh, by the way, this is one I wanted to drop in. Sometimes you'll have who's had a situation where they're following up a client? Let's say you got to get some data back, you got to get some information, and you keep asking and they go, I'll get back to you. Or they don't respond. Who's had that? Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, right? One of the problems and the reason that comes about is, my guess is when you follow up, you don't necessarily change mode. It's the same follow-up, yeah? Can you get back to us? Can you get back to us? This is called the escalation model, or escalating follow-up. And it's based the idea that we've got two sort of variables here. We've got a level of escalation, and we've also got the level of support we provide. So at the beginning, you'd kind of go, hey, Sean, I need you to get this fact find back and sign this. Can you get it back to us in 2 or 3 days? And you go, yeah, no problem, Stu. So I've defined the task. I've given you an action. We're a pretty low escalation level. And by the way, there's email templates for this I'll make available. Let's say 2 to 3 days later, I don't hear back from you. Next thing, I'm going to up it again. I'm going to check in. I'm starting to make you accountable. Hey, Sean, I just want to check in. How are you going with that, man? Yeah, I haven't got around to it, Stu. Okay, do you think you can get it done in the next 2? Yeah, I'll get it done, right? I'm like, great. Next 2 to 3 days, I'm picking on you, Sean, but Sean still hasn't got it in. So I'm going to go, okay, Sean's probably not going to do this on his own. So we're going to offer a helping hand. Sean, do you want some help with this? Should we book an online meeting? Now, maybe Sean goes, yep. And admittedly, it's probably taken me a little bit more. I have to jump in, I have to spend some time, but it's done, right? Alternatively, maybe Sean goes, no, I'll get it done. I don't need some help. And I go, okay, can you get it back to us? What happens now is we're into a bit of a situation where, have you ever seen one of those motivational posters on the wall, be the best you can be? Have you never noticed you put them on the wall and they disappear after about 3 months? You just don't notice them anymore, right? That's what's happening. Your follow-up has become that motivational poster. We have to up the game. For me, if you can really structure this right, this is your team. This becomes the big dog. This is where you step in. This is a real escalation, right? So Daryl steps in and goes, Sean, Stu let me know that we haven't heard back from you. Is everything okay? I really need to get this going. It's already been nearly 2 weeks. We kind of get on the way up. Sean goes, no, Daryl, it's cool. I'll get it done, right? Still nothing back. This is where we've really got to pull rank. Daryl says, hard stop. He gives the ultimatum. Sean, I've got to let you know. I'm going to have to put a hold on this unless we can get it back in the time frame. Do you want to keep going or do you want to put it on ice and we'll have to go back to the beginning again? It makes sense? Some people only study for an exam the night before the exam, right? And some people will only prioritize what you want them to prioritize if suddenly there is a very real consequence. And that's why this works. So if you're struggling with a follow-up in that process and you're kind of like, you're trying the motivation, you're hitting all of this, it's easy for them to do and they're not doing it, consider sort of triggering the other side of motivation, which is, look at what you're going to lose. We're going to have to go back and start again with the document. I'm going to have to charge you afresh. Does that help? Cool. All right, let's keep going. This is probably one of the most important sort of concepts in the whole piece, which is about future pacing. And when it comes to exciting somebody, future pacing is probably the single most important element. If I've spoken to you about sort of business, sort of visual models or models for explaining advice, we've probably had a conversation about, why I prefer the pyramid or the ladder to the trivial pursuit pie, right? And it's because when you talk about different models, the trivial pursuit pie is what we could. Do you know what I'm saying when I talk about a trivial pursuit thing? Okay, let me just jump across. So without naming names, there's a couple of solutions out there in the industry. There's a couple of tech solutions where they go, okay, your advice proposition looks like this, right? There's your cash flow, there's your investing, there's your estate plan, right? You know that one. The problem I have with this is what's called a completionist model. In other words, the idea is once you've done all of these things, you've got advice, you're done. Why would you need help from an advisor anymore? Okay. And for me, advice isn't about getting stuff done. It's not about ticking boxes. It's about achieving an outcome. It's about a transformation, which is why the pyramid is the one I want, because you start at the bottom and the top is financial independence. It's not about, you do the cash flow and you do the risk and estate planning, but that's not the goal isn't to fill in all the pieces. The goal is to achieve the outcome, which is income, passive income, a good body of assets and getting a good foundation. So when I talk about the reason I don't like that model, or the completions model, and the reason I like the sort of progressive model is all down to future pacing. Another example of this is the 4 futures. This is if you haven't seen this, I'll run through it really quickly. When a client starts working with you, that's where they're at, right? That's their starting point. And at that point, there's 4 possible outcomes. If they continue to do nothing, just piddling along, doing their own thing, they're going to get what are called the unmanaged outcome, which is probably, it's your baseline. If they sort of get on top of things, they do a few things right, they get what's called an acceptable outcome. In my mind, that's basically where you have a level of assets that run out around about the time you're scheduled to pass away. Then you got an ideal outcome, which is, if you really get on top of this, you take action, you get in control. And this for me is where you have a capital guaranteed amount that lasts forever. And then we got the risk impacted outcome, which is basically something bad happens, you didn't protect yourself and you're in big trouble. Make sense? Now, in terms of the value of advice, you could turn around and say, if that's for most people 1 million, and that's 2 million, and that's 3 million, and let's say this is a 20-year journey, that means the value of your advice is to help solve a $2 million problem. Make sense? Now, if you break it down and say over 20 years, that's adding $100,000 worth of value over each year. If you've been working together, you work out your fees as a percentage of that. Makes it very easy to say, if I charge you $5,000 a year and we solve this problem together, we're 20x in your investment. Does that make sense? But the whole point here is, firstly, that you're focused on the outcome. The value is in the end game where you're headed to. It also sort of shows you that advice is actually about 2 things. The first thing you need to do is you as a client, even if they leave you and they don't do any work with you, if they do one thing off the back of this, it's choose. Set yourself an outcome. Make a decision. Which outcome do you want? Do you want to go for that? Because if you want to go for that, go for it. If you don't want to go for that, you want to choose that, then that's fine. But don't sit there and do that if that's what you want. Make sense? But what's the second sort of decision that's really important? You might notice that these lines, they start to diverge as time goes on. And what this is getting at is, let's say you're 40 here. You can wait till 45 and not do anything, and you're probably going to be all right. You can still get on that sort of upward curve. What about if you wait till 50? Well, it's starting to get a bit more, the gap's starting to open a bit, right? What if you wait till 55? Well, in truth, if you wait till 55, that's off the table. And the point of this, it says the second most important thing about aiming for a financial goal or getting a plan together is the decision to act. Does this make sense? The point of this is, if you're trying to excite clients to sort of progress, one of the most important things you do is constantly remind them of where they are, what they're aiming for, what the next piece is, where you're going. As Taki Moore, someone I worked with a while, he had this great saying which says, clients will leave you when they run out of future. Does that make sense? The moment a client thinks that there's no more work to do, they've sort of reached the level, in other words, they've done everything it needs and they can kind of hold up, that's the point at which their excitement levels drop and they're likely to drop off. So if we can start from day one by constantly talking about goals, objectives, where they are, where they're going to be in 5 years, reminding them of why they're doing it, we can sort of leverage that excitement a bit more. Number 5, and then I will jump into some of the doing. But one of the things that this sort of enables really well is for you to start talking about what you do in terms of a system. James Clear's Atomic Habits. Anyone read it? So there's a piece where he talks about that having goals alone isn't what will get you the outcome. In actual fact, just focusing on the goals in most cases is not gonna get there. In actual fact, what gets people to where they want to be is the system, or following the process. Or more importantly, having a process, following a process. And if you really want to go far, it's loving the process. Like if you might buy a gym membership, or you might buy some weights. Buying the weights isn't what gets you the outcome. Deciding that you want to get fit isn't what gets you the outcome. What gets the outcome is getting up and following a routine. And what really gets you the results is falling in love with that routine, finding something that works for you and gets the results. Does that make sense? So the way we sort of get around that is early on in this process, we want to introduce your clients, keep them focused on the goal, keep them excited about that, but constantly remind them that what's going to get you the goal is working with me via the system that I've developed in my business, which if we don't make the right decisions and we follow, it will maximize your chance of achieving financial freedom. Does that make sense so far? It also will help you do something really useful, because if you can start talking about your system and presenting, this is the system, this is how it works, it's going to make your offer a lot more tangible. Because one of the things I'd love to be able to do as part of this onboarding process, like many of you have done already, is start to take some of that IP, that secret sauce in your business, and really sort of putting some bones around it. The idea behind this is advice is a bit like steam. You can kind of see it, right? Expertise. You can see it, it's there, but you can't really feel it or package it, right? When you present it, you go, I'm an expert, I know what I do. They've kind of got to trust you. Does that make sense? But if we can take your advice and we can condense it down to models, frameworks, talk about the system, you take take steam and you make it water. And water is something people can see and they can touch and they can feel. And the final step is, if we want to take it to the next level, you turn it into a book or maybe a video course or whatever. If you go down that, where you make it ice, which is something you can sell. But as part of this, we're going to start really early on by making it clear that they're setting goals. They've got to be excited and motivated to get the outcome. But the key to it is working with you via your review process, making sure you communicate regularly, working through the different stages, keeping you updated. That's the thing that's going to help them achieve the outcome. Does that make sense? Beautiful. Okay. Final thing is personalizing it. Whenever I talk about systemizing, a lot of people think it means, that's not even the right slide, but anyway, think it means sort of make it impersonal. I would say it's really easy to take this and make it personal. You are not trying to market what you do to 1 million people. It's not like Amazon. You've got 100 people. So some of the things we can do. Has anyone seen this email? Derek Sivers' CD Baby email. It was written years ago, but it's gone around the internet, right? So Derek Sivers started a business called CD Baby, which was basically an independent version of the iTunes store, long before the iTunes store. And he had this invoice that went out to people. He looked at it and said, that's boring. Let's make it memorable. And so he wrote this. This is what you get if you bought a CD off them. Basically talks about the fact that we took your CD, we sterilized, contamination-free gloves, put it on a satin pillow. Our team of 50 employees inspected it, polished it, and packing specialists from Japan lit a candle and they took it down. It's just nuts. But the impact this had, something simple as just rewriting it, putting a bit of flavor on it. And not only did it sort of end up being something that was CD Baby, we're very well known for it, but here we are 20 years later, we're talking about it as an example. And my guess is that if you bought a nudie juice, the fruit juice, and you've read the labels, you'll see the same thing, and it's been replicated since then. Some of the easy things to do are like welcome kits. How many people have a welcome kit here? No. Daryl, you do. What's in yours?
We try and make the advice tangible. So what I mean by that is we give people an actual folder.
Yep.
And in the folder, it has some vital information, including the SOA, but it has things like their current investments. It has a goals chart. We actually do a goals chart.
Beautiful.
Basis of our advice, so they can actually see the journey they've committed to and we've committed to making a realization for them.
Love it. And do you set them yourself, or do you get someone else to do it for you?
So if we can drop in and see them, we actually drop in and see them and we give it to them and then work through the document and say, this is a keepsake, and when information from us arrives, you can actually put it in to all these various dividers in the folder. Beautiful.
I've been doing welcome kits for about 6 years, ever since I saw sort of them done with a coaching group I was in. And what's amazing about these, for example, the things you can do, like, for example, just get a custom-made box, A4 for keeping documentation in. Choose a book you love. We got the Goodyear Journal designed. If you've written a book, there's so many things you can put in there. But most importantly, not only is it lower cost than you think, you can get a great welcome kit together for under $100, a really good one. And even we don't even send ours. There's a company down the road who basically stock it, and we send them an email saying you send it, and it goes automatically. So if as part of this you would like to develop a welcome kit or develop the process of doing it, I'm happy to help you do it. And I can tell you the things that we went through. I can help put you in touch with the suppliers we work with, and I can even see if we can work it out, because of all of the things I think out there, this is one of the things that really ramps up the wow early on. Handwritten notes.
Quick question before you do it. Can you, does the impact get lost? Obviously, I love technology and doing things digitally. Is there a way to do that digitally? Like maybe setting up some sort of
there is
share account and you've got that all kind of structured in that way? Or?
As in the pack itself is digital?
Or if there's a way you could do, obviously books these days, you can get, ebooks and those type of things, or the electronic version of them.
You can easily do that. I guess the one thing to be mindful of is in a digital world, the impact of having something.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
It's the impact you'd have on doing this is immeasurably greater if it's physical.
Okay.
But for example, that welcome letter is something that we sort of print it out, we personalize it, and then we just shoot it through and they print it off. So you can actually have zero handling if you wanted to. The books, when we run out of books, they send us an email, we order some more, it gets sent to the factory and they just include it when they go. Make sense? Handwritten notes, does anybody do those? Yeah. Do you actually write them personally, Darryl?
Yes, I do, because again, it's that bit of tangibility. They're used to getting letters by email or letters in the mail, and that's why I've got a pretty good pen. So I've invested in, a decent pen with decent ink and all that sort of stuff, and it's just a bit different. Just like I send people thank you cards. It's
again, in a world of digital, to send someone a handwritten note has a big impact. But again, there's apps out there. There's 2 apps. I think Punk Post is one of them, where you can actually draw on your iPad and it will basically send it out and it looks like, your handwriting. So there's ways of sort of doing this in a smart way. And again, it's just about the impact. Honestly, check-in calls are one of the most underutilized sort of check it like early first 90 days, just jumping on the phone and just saying, hey, look, I'm not calling for any other reason. I just want to say, how's it going? Is there anything you need? How's the experience going? Got any questions? So simple. And even in many cases, clients might go, no, it's all good. Thanks very much for the call. And that's it. Alternatively, then I go, actually, I wanted to ask you, do you help people with this? Great. Because I've got, you know what I mean? Amazing the things that come out of it. Does anybody do quick welcome videos when a client come on board? Sean, you do. How does it work?
It's something that I've recently done. So this is, I guess in the digital world, is my equivalent of the handwritten note. So just using Loom and actually sending clients a video following up from a meeting. So rather than saying an email, it was nice to meet you, actually being a bit more animated and, sending them something a bit more exciting.
I've even got a framework for them called it's like the welcome, and you hit 6 marks. And it's just like, you come off the back, you just pull up your Loom and go, hey, Sean, just want to say thanks very much for coming on board. Here, let me outline where we're going from here. The copy can be similar. Obviously, it's personalized, but you're reading off almost like a structured script, which means you can deliver it in 3 minutes. The team grab it off Loom, they drop it into an email, bang, instant personalization. A lot of people are doing
it. That sounds great. I've started doing a lot more Looms, like even simple things like FSG updates. I send them a quick video just to tell them, well, this is, the sort of change with it. And the feedback I'm getting is actually really positive. Instead of reading through a whole document, they're loving it. So that welcome letter thing would be great.
Josh, I mean, I'm interested to know, because it's beautiful where you live. You see in the background, you got the sun. Do you just do it sort of on the cusp?
Yeah, I do. I do it I grab my phone and just do it on my phone. Because I remember what you said, trying to set it up and, even like getting that camera thing that's on the screen or whatever that you've got. I thought, no, I'll just use my phone. It's a bit more, I just get it done. So, yeah.
Look, sometimes I actually think, and this is the whole thing, different people have different views regarding sort of the Zoom background thing. I think if there's stuff going on behind you, pop it on. But sometimes it's the impromptu stuff that actually has the biggest impact. I worked with Dean Holmes from Absolute Wealth for about 2 years, and he, just before we were working together, he was actually in the UK, and he didn't tell his clients he was moving over there and just continued to work with them. But he'd sort of, he'd just shoot the messages through on the cusp. And at the end of it, he had a clock in the background, which ran out of batteries. It was always saying 2 o'clock, and it became a running joke. It was just like, it was a 2 o'clock thing. And eventually it was just like, became such a fixture, such a talking point. He left it there. So sometimes you don't need the polish. You just need to kind of put it out there and sort of get it done. Cool. Should we jump into a bit of the getting it done? I know we've only got a few minutes left, but let me give you sort of a bit of an outcome. I actually designed this to be a bit of a tactile thing. So by far the best way you can do this is kind of print it out. This is kind of all of the onboarding touch points that we've currently got. And I've broken them into sort of 4 categories. The first is the advice onboarding piece, which is really about, how you approach the plan scope session, I sort of gave a bit of a template early on. I'll just grab my pen. So, and again, I'm sort of mapping it out. And again, the purpose for me is actually, if you were to print out the pages which have got all of the, where are they? The ones that look like this. I actually think the best way to do is print these out, cut them into little pieces because they're meant to be cut, and then either just put them on a desk and actually map it out like that. I put it as an image here, but the best way to do this, I think, is go analog. So then you can rearrange it and you can put your times in place. But so, for example, I've color-coded it here. For me, and again, you might do things differently. I've always had the view that day one, you kind of start with your plan scope session. And once clients have said yes, we kind of start the onboarding process. Obviously, day 1 to 3, I think there's always 2 yeses that you get. The yes at the end of the meeting, and then the yes where they sign the terms of engagement and agree to the payment terms. And I've always thought that the second yes is the true yes. Once you've done that, I'll come back to sort of some of the touch points. I've always viewed fact finding as something that should happen after the first appointment. Some people might disagree with me, but I think once the first appointment's been had and you've agreed the scope, the reason for getting that information is super clear. And also there's a good chance clients are more motivated to give you the data because, you've positioned it and gone, look, I'd really love to be sitting down with you in the next 2 weeks to talk through strategy. In order to do that, we need to get information so I can sit down and analyze it. So I'm going to give you some information about how fact finding. I'll get maybe a member of the team sits down, or maybe you shoot through a link. But I want you to make some time in the next week to sit down together, maybe an hour. You'll need these documents, but sit down, give me as much information as you can. If you can't find information, let me know, but let's get this done. You see what I mean? James Clear has an interesting study where he talks about 3 focus groups who were basically part of a fitness program or get fit program. And there were two control groups. The first group was given a fitness plan, and the second group was given a fitness plan and motivational messages. And 35% of the people in the first group achieved their outcomes, and 38% of the second group. There was a third group that 91% of them achieved the outcome. And the difference was the third group were given a fitness plan and motivational content, but they were also asked each week to define what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, and how they were going to do it. In other words, making clients say, okay, I need you to do the fact finding. When do you think you can do it? How are you going to do it? And where are you going to be when you do it is one of the keys to getting to visualize it. You might know Scott Pape does it. He's put names on his date nights, right? He says, your budget night, you're going to go out, you're going to book a restaurant, you're going to get a nice bottle of red wine, and you can sit there and have that. Suddenly, you're visualizing yourself sitting down and doing it, and that's the difference. Make sense? Cool. If you do a strategy session, and by the way, I've given you some frameworks around this. This is kind of how I'd structure the strategy blueprint session. And I'll make available a training module called Between the Yes and the Plan if you want to dive into it. But if you don't do the strategy blueprint, for some clients you wouldn't. And then plan presentation, we've got client service agreement, and then we're into sort of implementation updates and implementation debrief. So that's kind of the advice piece. And if you want to talk a bit more about how to do it, I'm happy to dive into. The bits I really wanted to talk about are, outside of that, you've got what I call experiential touch points. Does that make sense? And there I break it up into 3 pieces. They're touch points in order to inform clients about what they need to know. Often it's about teaching them about your proposition, about who to contact, about the scope of what you do. You've also got touch points which are about involving. In other words, getting clients to behave in a certain way, to respond, to get information back. In other words, training them to take action. This isn't necessarily action related. This is always about action. And then finally, we've got touch points which are about excite and delight. Things that are either going to make people feel excited about what's coming, or give them some, an enjoyable experience today. Does that make sense? And by the way, there's templates for all of these. So I'll run through them. Team touch point is one of them in here. And that's really about, I do this fairly early on. Early on in the piece, if you've got a team, as soon as your welcome videos out there, I think you reach out and you get the team to say, hey, it's Stu here from Hill Ross. I just wanted to make contact. I'm your kind of tour guide. I'm your help. I'm here to help you with anything. I just wanted to give you an outline of where we're going from here. And if you've got any questions, please email them back. For those of you who've got a business where there's multiple touch points, this early team touch point is key because it will set the expectation that it's not just about going through you, it's about going through a team. So that makes sense so far. Trent, do you do this already? No. Okay. That might be one thing to look at. For those of you who are kind of investment centric or have a big part of your proposition is investments, you might want to lay out really early what your investment philosophy is. If that's a value piece, then it's worth outlining and saying, hey, I want to tell you a bit about how we invest. How many people have got an investment sort of philosophy piece paper? Yeah, I thought Josh would. Yeah, so that put it out fairly early. And you know what? That might be something that you do, it might be something you do sort of around here, where you're kind of through the woods and it's a bit more of an informational piece, or if it's really valuable and it's going to form part of your advice thing, you might pop it earlier. Does that make sense? Another one here is outline other services. This might be useful if you are a multidisciplinary practice, or alternatively, you potentially, one of your objectives is to work with people in their family family group. Daryl, this might be something you want to do pretty early on. And again, you might want to wait until you kind of through some of the implementation, or you might want to pop it here, in fact, you could trial it in a few different places and see the outcome. But this is really saying, look, I just want to let you know, I know we're working on these things, but we also do a lot of work, a bunch of other areas. So, for example, if you ever need some help with lending, please know that that's something we do. If you need cash, because I guess, one of those things, one of those referral comments you always see that comes out. If you know anybody who might need our services, a referral is the biggest compliment. Well, I have a problem with anybody. Tell me who you want, but if needs our services, what are your services? That's an assumption that I know what you do. Tell me. What else we got here? Jump in here. Another one is team contact details. There's a template which literally outlines. I want to introduce you to the team and what they do. If you need to speak to anybody about getting a report, Stu's your man to contact. If you want to sort of book a session to talk with me personally, you can do it via whoever it might be, and just giving contact details so they know where to go. Otherwise, what often happens is people default to going through the avenue that they've always been through. And my guess is if you're the person initiating the relationship, it's going to go through you. Does that make sense? What else we got? How reviews work. I think it's probably pretty valuable early on. Maybe around about, some of you would look to do it around about here. Day 70 is a good time to do it. Hey, I know we've just implemented the advice and we're now in that period where, we're kind of working towards it, but I want to let you know another really important piece about our proposition, which is the review. And that's when you can pull out maybe you send a video where you're talking through, there's a model where we talk about why we do reviews. When you start off, firstly, that's the outcome that you're aiming for. This is your new happy client. And the problem is a lot of people tend to think that their path to financial success is a straight line, when in truth, most of the time, it's an exponential curve. And the problem is if your client thinks that is the outcome, maybe 3 years in, they think they should be there. They're actually there. How are they going to feel about that? Not that great. So having a review is about sitting down and analyzing and getting really clear about where they're at. And there's always three outcomes. You sit down, you have the review, they think they're there. You say, no, you're exactly where you need to be. And you just continue with the strategy. Maybe sometimes you're having a conversation, they're up here. And you can have a conversation about potentially de-risking or, bringing forward. We're going really well. We could probably achieve more. The other outcome is maybe they're there, in which case that's great because it means you can ascertain whether this is just part of a normal fluctuation or whether or not you need to revise the strategy and get on track. So that's an important way of explaining why you do reviews, right? They're not just a meeting, they're actually part of the system. Does that make sense? Let me keep going. Another really easy one to do, and I do this sort of a lot. I do it right on Facebook. It's just pull out an article of interest that you think is relevant. You read something, you go, that's a great article. Who would love that? You know what? Josh would like that. Tat would like that. I'll send. And you can even tag on your system people's interest. And when you find a really great article, you just go, hey, send it out through your email marketing system. Hey, Daryl, I just saw this article. I really liked it. I thought you'd like it because it talks about ... Let me know what you think. Great touch point, particularly if you're trying to educate about something that's relevant. And another one that I think is key is you can just jump in and sort of explain a fundamental. For those of you who have a claims guarantee offering, you might turn around and say, look, I just want to let you know, one of the things that we do for people is we offer a claims assistance guarantee. Whereas if you ever need help with a claim, come to us and we will help you through it. You might want to explain the wealth pyramid. In other words, reiterate the key elements of your proposition so they, don't forget it. Make sense? Shall I keep going? Cool. But there's templates for all of these. So as I'm going through this, you might be sitting there already which is why you've got the blank one. You might want to just start to mark out where you think certain things might fit along the way. Cool. Okay, now we're into involve. And so one of the things you can do, I'll put that on the back. You might have a piece where you outline to people how to update data. Hey, I just want to shoot through a quick video. A lot of people often ask, when should they update it? How do they update data? For those of you who have a portal where you're collecting client information through the portal, maybe telling people how to get in and update any changes is getting ahead of the need to remind them after the event. To that end, if you have a portal, there we go, let's try that one. I think one of the most important things you can do early on is actually do maybe some videos on how to actually use the portal. Anybody use My Prosperity? No? Anyone use Cashflow Tools? Okay, we'll forget that one then. Get the idea. What else we got? Let us know list is a really good one to send. Who uses the let us know list? Yeah. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's Elizabeth used it. It's a visual, I can kind of see it there. It's a visual template which has 16 reasons that clients might want to contact you. And I think sending that out pretty early on in the piece, where do we put it? Let us know list, is the key to sort of making clients realize that if something changes, don't wait. Let you know sooner rather than later. I imagine there's nothing worse than clients coming to review and going, oh, by the way, got divorced, sold the house, gifted my kids $1 million. What are we talking about again? The review report goes in the bin, you start again, right? We want to get on top of that. If you're doing sort of work on cash flow, you might just schedule a bit of a 3-month savings check-in. I'm a great believer when it comes to cash flow. Like a lot of advisors will go in and they'll just pull apart the cash flow, right? That's where your spending is, and it often slows down the process. I've always thought the better way of doing it is to say to clients, right, you guys earn $200,000. Do you think you could commit to saving 20% or 10% of your income? Yeah. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to start saving money, park it in an account. I'm going to give you a call in 3 months. If there's $5,000 in that account, we're going well. If there isn't, I'm going to do cash flow for you. Set people a target. If you need $20,000 income to do your stuff, hand over responsibility for them to save it. And if they can't, they pay you to do the cash flow. Does that make sense? You might want to do something as simple as just, if you're running webinars or maybe you're doing a live event, issue a personal invite early on so they can come along to something. That's another one for those of you that are doing it. You might want to outline if you've got certain resources that you have, like a portal, or they can log in and get a report, or alternatively, maybe you've got video resources. Outline what they are so they know where it is. Requesting feedback just at the end of the 90 days, I think, is a great thing to do, both so you can learn about what well, but for them to reflect back and often articulate, you know what, it's brilliant. Sometimes at the end of this 90 days, you get some really great feedback. This is the best decision I ever made. I've just been so impressed. It's beyond expectations. It gives you a bit of a boost, but it also, reinforces the relationship. Calendar events is an easy one if you run events during the year. And I think a really good one is ask for a testimonial. And again, if I mark out where I think this lives, I think it probably lives about day 50. Not at 90, it lives a bit earlier. Does anybody do this? I want
to do it more, Stu, but I'm not doing it.
Okay. We have a tool called Endorsal, which we bought a lifetime subscription to a long time ago. And we actually have the ability to provide you with your own portal. And why Endorsal is great is it actually enables you to create a link. I'll record a video and show you what it looks like. You can send out a link to clients, say, hey, would you mind giving us some feedback? And they click the link, it takes them through a page which they can upload a photo, or they can add their profile photo from LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever. And then they put their name, their address, and they put the feedback. You can have a star rating. They click submit, and that's it. It goes into the system. You can view all the testimonials. You can approve the ones you like, reject the ones you don't. But the really clever thing is actually you can get a code which you put on your website. And guess what happens when you approve? They automatically appear as part of a ticker. It's also got a system where you can integrate with Google reviews and Facebook. You can automate actually going out and asking for reviews if you put a list in there, and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm going to do a standalone piece on this. I'm going to do a bit of a training session around how to do a testimonial video. In other words, get on Zoom with a client, take them through a question and answer thing, and record a 20-minute sort of interview, which you can then use to cut up and use the video. But if you're interested in really upping your testimonial game, this system is by far the easiest way to do it, because I think otherwise you never get them, because it's always an afterthought. And then when you do get them, you've got to collect them and you've got to put them on the site. This just automates it all. So if you're interested, It's just something we're sort of adding into the mix because I think social proof is really important. Let me just jump into the final piece. Is this useful, guys and girls? Okay, final bit. The excite and delight is my favorite part. I'm just going to run through some stuff you can do. I probably shouldn't have mixed these out of order, but anyway. Welcome video we've talked about. Just as soon as it boots up, as soon as the client said yes, you can do this before you send out the terms of engagement, or you can send it after. If you feel the client needs a bit of a nudge, before really works well. If you want to do it after, that works too. Red carpet welcome. There's a template which is on the I'll provide, which just it literally says most of what that particular email about is congratulating the client on the decision. I want to say thank you very much for making a great decision. We know from working with clients that when people get advice, they're much more likely to achieve the outcome. And I'm delighted to be going on this path with you. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen the next few years. And most of all, I'm really glad you chose us. Again, this is just a communication to really reinforce the decision clients made. And by reinforcing it, you trigger that desire to be involved and commit to the process. That makes sense? Sometimes if you're really goals-based, just shooting through a communication, 90 day, this one's one that works really well about the 90-day mark, reconfirming. Hey, just want to remind you, this is what we're aiming for. This is the big picture end game. This is the immediate things we want to do in the next 5 years. If any of that changes, let me know. But otherwise, can you just come back to me and let me know that that's what you're aiming for? I know some businesses who in the first 90 days actually shoot out to clients and go, could you send us through, pick an image. Actually, Hillross did this, didn't they, Daryl? Pick a photo that speaks to your goals.
Yes, correct. And it's actually even on business cards. So all of us as advisors actually have to do it on the back of our cards.
Yep. So if you're into visuals, I know a couple of businesses who've done this, they've got a goals board in their waiting room where they get pictures from clients sending through what they want to achieve. Or alternatively, when people have gone on holidays or bought houses or whatever it is, they get them to send through a picture and then just keep a track of it. Again, if you're goals-based, this would really work for you. Touch base, whether it's just like a reminder, 50 days in or 60 days in, there's a task that pops up. Josh, have you spoken to Stu recently? If not, give him a call. Just find out how he's doing. We've got 4 different email templates that are literally just check-in emails. Hey, Josh, it's Stu here. Mate, I just want to check in. How's everything going? Is there anything I can help with? Really easy way of doing it. I'll talk about the automation as well before we go. Wealth pyramid. If you are somebody who uses the wealth pyramid, or you use it, or whatever your model is, I think it's sending it out and just reminding clients of it, particularly around the 60 to 70 when this advice has been implemented and we're now into that normalization. It's a good time to remind them of, hey, just want to remind you of the journey you're on. We're now working on that foundational piece, and I'm hoping we're working towards that financial freedom piece. Anybody do sort of little gift giving?
I wanted to do something like that, and then I think a week after I thought about it, the clients contacted me and said they're separating. So that was kind of like, is that maybe not a good sign?
Well, it probably doubles your gift cost, but that's. Do you know? I've tried a lot of things. I think books are the way to go. I think sending people books it just works. What I don't like, I don't know how people feel about the corporate sort of merchandise. I've always felt like if it's not something that I would use, I'm not going to buy it for someone else. Like if I'm going to look at that and going, do I really need a branded power cube or whatever it is? Conversely, journals are a really good thing as well. You can get journals branded really easily. You can get them personalized if you want. You can get your name on them. And I'm a big fan of moleskins. I love the feel of them. So I'm always thinking, if I can get something that feels like a moleskin as a notebook, it's just a good way to go. How's things video? A little check-in video. Hey, that's another good way of sort of checking in. One of the biggest, I think one of the most high-value things you can do is actually make introductions. And particularly, and maybe Darryl, I know you work with a few high net worth individuals. High net worth people tend to value the right introductions.
Yeah, correct. I mean, one of the things we do is we've got trusted relationships with a number of third-party providers, be they estate lawyers, be they mortgage brokers, be they general insurers, insurance brokers, be they property buyers advocates, things like that. And in the induction process, what we do is we try and find out where they are there any needs in these other areas? And if there are, then we ask them, do you have a provider in the area? If they haven't got a provider, then there's an option for us to introduce someone at the right time.
Perfect. We've spoken about welcome kits. I really think this is low-hanging fruit if you're interested in putting them all together. And the only other one that I think is really useful is bear in mind, you're really aiming at the excite thing. If you can send out a case study to a client, and if you've got case studies, I want to share this because this case study is a client who I think is about 5 years ahead of you. And I want to share some of the journey they've been on and where you're going to go next. That's really going to sort of future pace. And they're going to go, hey, I want a bit of that. And again, it's also really closely tied to offsetting this natural human driver to want to be further ahead than we are now and not really understanding compounding. So that can really work. Does that help? So there's a bunch of stuff in there. I guess the key question that often get asked at this point is how many touch points? And obviously I'm putting all of those in. I wouldn't even think about having them all. I think if you can sort of start off with just a few really good ones and work with those, that's usually the best way to go. Let's talk a bit about the automation piece, Josh. There's a kind of sweet spot I've always felt between automation and personalization. Like in many of the cases, the emails you want to send out are probably going to be something that you don't want to shoot out of a email marketing system. You probably want to look at. And I've always structured when we're talking about sort of personal client emails, I've always structured so you've got a workflow system that would say, hey, Josh, it's day 30. It's time to send a check-in email. Or it's time to send this email to the client. And usually what I would do is I'd sign and task the person, and then I would either direct them to an email template, which is in our email system, or alternatively a link to the template. And the view of mine is that if the task is for the person to send the email and the email is templated, you're going to get the ability to personalize it and customize it. And then as you go on, you might eventually want to sort of get to a point where it's more automated. But I feel particularly, when you're talking about a business where there is a level of personalization, there's very few emails that I think I'm comfortable sending out where I wouldn't want to run my eye over it and look at it first. Does that make sense? Debbie, you might have a different view because I know you guys are sort of very systemized. How do you approach this?
So with our email templates, I feel the same with you. So we try and automate or semi-automate just about everything that we can do. But sending out automated emails to clients without first looking at it is so dangerous. So we only do that so let us know, goes out regularly for ongoing service clients and an offer of review just to make sure that we're ticking that service benchmark. But everything else is semi-automated. It pops up. We can review it when the time comes to send it, and run our eye over it because otherwise, you'll just end up.
It's just a variable, and you don't need to because we're not talking about a million emails going out. It's not like Amazon. Hold on, Stu.
Stu. Answer me this. The email that I received from you on Wednesday morning, I read that and got the guilt that I hadn't registered for today. Was that automated or was that?
No, I can actually show you the exact thread on shared inbox where Jen gave me some copy and I went, no, I'll give you it. And I went, no, this is how I want it to be. Now because I read that and I felt I'd let you down.
I don't. And then I thought, everyone probably got that.
No, look, it was an email that was sent out to a group of people who I thought this was relevant to, and we actually went through. I'll see if I can find it. Anyway, basically I said, Jen, who's already registered? And she said, these people are registered. I said, okay, who else do we think should be registered? Trent should probably register. We should probably let Josh know about it. We should probably let Debbie know about it. And then I said, okay, what's the best way to do this? Okay, dear Debbie, dear Josh, I'm running a session on Friday. Thought it might be relevant. Are you coming along? So it was personalized, but it definitely, it came out of our email, our missive email, but it was sent out to more than one of you. Does that make sense?
I think. Go Trent.
Sorry,
I was just going to say the use of language is very good in that it does make you think, oh, that's directed at me. I better act on it right now.
It's also written, I like writing emails in a personal way. Like that's one of the big differences and one of the things I learned. When you send out an email that someone says, Dear Trent, on Friday as part of our fast track, we, as you know, would run regular sessions. Many of the people who come along value them for the, that's written as if I'm talking to a room full of people. I think if you read an email and it doesn't feel like you and I having a conversation, the tone's wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Just going to ask a quick question, Stu. So I suppose automated emails maybe one thing, but I was more, I'm more after a prompter. So basically, like through the process that I have, obviously the automation part is actually saying, oh, it's day whatever, and you need to send, and having the templates, but then, as you say, personalizing or I, create a loom and send that to clients instead.
So when you build your onboarding process, right? And I can give you an example of the process. You'll time code it. So day 1, this happens. Day 2, day 4, day 3, and you'll have the task pops up and then it's due. So when I say day 4 to 7, that means the earliest possible time that task can start is day 4. The latest it can end is day 7. And what I would do is I'd program that into a workflow thread. In our case, that's teamwork projects. In Debbie's case, that might be Xplan. In someone else's case, it might be work sorted. But what it would pop up a task on day 50 that says client check-in, and it might be assigned to you. Or it might be, in our case, it might be assigned to Jen, and it's her responsibility to make sure it gets put in my diary and it happens. So what I'm doing is I'm relying on the system to remember that things need to be done. And then it's directing saying, Jen, you need to put this in Stu's diary, make sure the email template that we have in Missive is there. He's going to go in and personalize it and then send it. Does that help?
Yeah, because I always have good intentions to do things, and then I just get busy and then I forget.
So the biggest thing I can say is first, let the system do the timing thing, which is why I always set the review, like reviews, for example. I set them a year in advance. If you're due a review in October, that's your 1st of October. I'm going to set my review process due 1st of October 2022, which means sometime about mid-August, a task is going to pop up to start the process. That makes sense? But even better, here's the killer thing. If you're the kind of person who's going to see that and go, oh, I need to procrastinate it, assign the task to someone else to make you do it. This is where an operations manager is really important, because they're going to be the person, you're responsible for doing the task, but they're making sure that you're accountable for it. Does that make sense? That's really the way around it. That works for me. Any other questions about any of this so far? Okay. Has this been useful? I love this topic. It absolutely, yeah. So let's talk about where to from here. If you're keen to get this done, I think probably there's 4 things you can do, and then one sort of action I'd love you to sort of involve me in. I think the first thing is to just kind of review your advice onboarding. The biggest question I'd ask is identify areas where you're doing things earlier than they possibly need to be done. I was doing some work with the guys at Dollar Growth on this. This is not criticism. And their review process, we were looking at it, and they were creating a draft review report 6 weeks before the review. And when we sat down, we said, why are you doing that? They were like, we don't know. So they were doing all this work early on, and they only needed to do it 2 days before. So if you look at it and go, is there anything that we're doing? Fact finding is a big example. It might not be done, or alternatively, where clients might not be fully motivated to proceed. If you've got turnaround times issues in one particular area, that's a good place to look. I'd also, before you start adding in anything new, just have a look at what you're already doing. There might be some onboarding activities, Josh, like your video stuff, which is already working, but you just need to sit down and work out how you can do it more consistently. And that might be simply literally modifying your process. So as soon as the client says yes, the next task, the next thing you do is do the file note. Oh, and in order to close this task off, I've got to do a quick welcome video. Make sense? Or brief whoever you're going to work with to say, can you make sure you go into Loom, and if there's not a video, make me do it. If there is a video, grab the video, put it into this email template, and the email template looks like this. Bang. You've handed off part of the task. It'll get done. Map out your first 90. As I said, I would really suggest either grab that template and just draw it up, or print these out, do it with a team, lay them out on a desk, have some fun with it, come up with some different permutations. And then when you're done, sort of shoot me through a photo of it so I know what it looks like. Go analog. And this is the kind of thing, as you go through it, I don't want you to be looking at this and going, oh, this is something I'm going to roll out next year, or I'll finally get around to. Pick one thing that really excites you. And I'd like to see if you can trial it this week. One touch point that you're going to send out and get it done. And all I'm asking is, if you sometime between now and the next session can just do your 9-day map and just take a photo of it on the desk and just shoot it through to me, and then just let me know what's the one thing you're trialing. And if you're trialing something and you want, Stu, have you got a template that does this, or if you got an example of it, I'll jump in and I'll help you out with it, and we'll get that done. Is that cool? Well, there you have it, ladies and gents. The first 90 days, the power of the first 90 days. I hope you got a lot out of that. I know it's really informed a lot of what I do with my clients, as well as it's something I've worked with a number of different businesses, not just to design, but also to work out how we systematize it and integrate it into everything they do. Obviously, there's more to this, and the next progression within what I do is not just looking at the first 90 days, but looking at, what's the experience going to be in that year 1 working with you, year 2, year 3, and so on. But this gives you a good primer, because I think the first 90 days is really the battleground for setting down the right kind of habits, the right kind of engagement, the right kind of everything, expectations. And it can have a really massive upstream impacts. That's all from me. As always, if you want to find out more and you're interested in learning more about this and hundreds of other modules, well, not hundreds, just over 100, I'd say, we've got on the program, head over to ourdairy.com.au, and please feel free to leave some feedback, a review for someone else, to let them know what this podcast is all about and why it may be worth their while to listen to. Other than that, have a great week, and I'll speak to you soon.